Welcome to Back from the Abyss. I'm Dr. Craig Heacock. One of the tragic truths of psychiatry is that the sickest patients, more often than not, either don't realize they're ill or are convinced that treatment will do nothing. And no group of patients better exemplifies this than those with schizophrenia and other psychotic illnesses. A common presentation in my office is an older adolescent or young adult, often male, who's descending into psychosis and also completely unaware of the illness or need for treatment. And meanwhile, the parents are telling me of frightening threats, explosive outbursts, bizarre behaviors, profound social isolation, and paranoid beliefs. This episode today is the first of two parts. In part one, Karen, the mother of Sam, describes the progression of his illness and how she's grieved and coped and parented him. In part two, in 2 weeks, we'll hear from Laurie and Dave, who also have a son with severe mental illness. And these two stories are both the same and also different in some key ways. One thing they both share is that their sons, after some very scary times, both finally agreed to cooperate with treatment. But how do you get your child into treatment when they're too ill to cooperate? I think this then gets to the 3 L's: love, loot, and the law. Sometimes the power of love can break through, and the ill child will agree to treatment to assuage the parents. Other times, financial support or gifts or bribes can work. Thus, parents can use their loot to convince the child to get into treatment. The final L, however, is the most traumatic for all involved. And unfortunately, a common route into treatment for the seriously ill child is often the legal system, whether through involuntary hospital stays, jail, court-ordered meds, mandated UAs and BAs, and with the threat of longer-term incarceration. In these two stories, their sons finally agreed to treatment for what I would say was a combination of love and the law. Despite their devastating illnesses, both sons were able to maintain some level of trust and connection with their parents. Also, both of them had just enough insight and judgment to fear the legal consequences of their escalating behaviors. Karen's husband decided not to participate in this recording, but he was fully supportive of her telling her story.
Well, the presentation of the illness was sudden and onset, but actually looking back at it, I think there were a lot of signs that something was going on, because there were behaviors in high school that were not normal to his personality from his youth. So probably starting sophomore year in high school, he was always very intelligent, sensitive, sweet, empathetic kid, really, really good with numbers. I was excited to see where his giftedness was going to go in life. And so starting in his sophomore year in high school, he started to become very uninterested in learning, and even his love of math declined. And so he started failing in high school, which was a concern to us, but not a huge concern. We got tutors. We tried to help him out and even offered him, do you want to get your GED? Maybe high school isn't for you. Maybe this is too stressful. But he stayed in high school and just began to decline in his behavior outside of even his education, just more deviant behavior. Began smoking weed regularly, daily, a lot of lying, a lot of going out with his friends, sneaking out. And again, it's behavior that a lot of adolescents have. So we thought, okay, well, maybe this is normal behavior. He's going through a rebellious stage. But it got worse and worse and worse. And he barely graduated high school. He actually did graduate. And that summer, we said, let's just take a break from work, from school, just take a break from everything and enjoy the summer. Let's talk and what you're going to do in the fall.
At that point, were you thinking that this could be psychiatric? Or were you
Not at all.
This is just a kid who's sort of gone off the rails and playing badly and just doing things that you wish he wouldn't do.
Right. Yeah. Struggling with himself, struggling with who he was. Yeah, doing badly. Of course, using, I only knew about the marijuana, but found out later that there were more drugs involved. So his birthday is in September. And so we had some amazing weekends of celebration in September of 2018. So he was turning 19 and went to Utah camping, went to San Diego. I mean, big birthday celebrations. And then a week after we got back from one of those weekends, he went out with his friends for the weekend and came back a completely different person. I mean, just strange behavior, saying stuff that didn't make sense, acting very sporadically, all of a sudden just extremely rude and argumentative and just absolutely a different person. It was very confusing. And we found out that he had used some LSD over that weekend. And so I was thinking maybe this is a residual effect from the LSD. He's kind of caught in his trip or something. Or maybe he's still using, because he would run out at night, leave the house like violently, and not return until the morning. So this was the crisis stage. This is the onset. So it seemed all of a sudden he was a different person. He had a psychotic break. And still, no, I had no thought at all that this was psychosis. I didn't know anything about psychosis or schizophrenia, really, except that it was a scary word and I didn't want anything to do with it. So I would say that crisis time of complete tornado of everything turning upside down. He's a completely different person. It was extremely scary. That lasted probably about a total of 6 weeks. And during that 6 weeks, he had moments of catatonia where he didn't speak for 3 days at all. And his actions were very robotic, and like going to the fridge 20 times and getting water, sipping it, putting it down. I mean, really strange behavior. Then at about the 6-week mark, he came out of his catatonia, and that's when he got really violent with me and threatened my life. I was on the phone with my husband, and he was at work and was very upset. And then my son came down and like took my phone and said something and threw the phone. So my husband called the police, and they came. And that's when we got an involuntary hold on him for 3 days, which was a saving time, because it gave us 3 days to kind of process and say, what are we going to do? Because something's going on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was the presentation.
So looking back, it looks like, in hindsight, there was a period, which now we know is a prodromal period through high school, where things were slowly, steadily falling apart, and then a dramatic break, mm-hmm. possibly catalyzed by substance use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is that how you came to find me? He was admitted to the hospital on this 3-day hold?
No, it took a little longer to find you, because he was absolutely resistant to anything, any treatment. So actually what we did is we took him out of the state, because we felt like we needed to get him away from drug, like marijuana, just because it was obvious that was making it worse. So get him away from the people he knew, get him away from the substances. So he spent actually, and we even did an intervention, because at this time I still thought it was drugs. I mm-hmm. thought he was addicted to drugs. And so I had a rehabilitation place picked out. We did a little intervention, and he actually stayed with my husband's cousin for 4 months in a different state, because we didn't want him to be here. We thought it was not safe for him to be here.
Was he psychotic during that time?
He did have, yeah. I mean, he had periods of psychosis for sure. And it was helpful for us to ground and say, what are we going to do? And I think it was helpful for him. It just gave us the space we needed, and he was safe, somewhat safe out there. Yeah, so it was during that time, that was the spring of 2019, that my husband's therapist recommended you, and I think even somehow contacted you to get us in with you. So we had this appointment set in the books, knowing that when he got home, there was a huge chance that he would not go. But we were like, let's make an appointment anyway and get this set up. So first, when they got home, They actually went to Spain to do the Camino because at the time we're still thinking he needs like some spiritual something, or, this is a drug thing, this is a personal thing, but, you can't walk schizophrenia out of you. Mm-hmm. So when they got back from the Camino is when he had an appointment with you. And I do not know how we got him to go, but he agreed to go. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I might just read from this note. I was just pulled this up. So let's see. I saw Sam June of 2019, and he came with Dad. And his first thing he said to me is, "I don't know why I'm here." And here's how I described him. I said, let's see, dreadlocks, uncomfortable staring, no spontaneous speech, inappropriate smile much of the time, poverty of speech and thought, long delays in response to my questions, thought blocking, question mark, slowed thought process, awkward interpersonally, no insight into illness, and possibly attending to internal stimuli at points during the evaluation. And in my impression, I wrote, 19-year-old with either schizophrenia or substance-induced psychosis. And I remember, I see so many cases like this, and I remember thinking like, oh man, I hope this is just drugs. Mm-hmm. I hope, because if it's drugs and he stays away from the weed particularly, like he could snap back and come back to him. But I also remember hearing about what we now know as the prodrome in high school, the withdrawal and the pulling away and the failing out of school. And that's such a classic schizophrenia thing. So I remember this first meeting having this real sense of dread that we were starting down the path of schizophrenia.
Yeah, me too. Because actually my sister-in-law is a psychiatrist, so I spent a lot of time talking to her. And I just kept trying to get her to tell me this could be a drug-induced psychosis. That's what I wanted it to be as well. And the idea of schizophrenia absolutely freaked me out. So I was still hoping that too.
What do you remember about those early weeks and months, after I first met Sam and we're trying to get him on a medication, and, at least from my end, it's becoming more and more clear that this is schizophrenia, and I'm wondering what was happening, what you remember on your end, both with you and your husband, and it's coming to the reckoning of that possibility.
Yeah, I don't know if I was coming at the reckoning yet. I was trying to, but I was still just really trying to control the situation and keep him away from marijuana, hoping that if he was kept away from it, he would get back, I guess. So, and that was a full-time job, trying to keep him away from that. And I couldn't. I mean, I couldn't control that. So I don't even know when I fully accepted it. I think it's only been in the last couple of years, actually.
Was there a difference between you and your husband in terms of the acceptance process? Because I'm wondering, like, when a bomb gets dropped like this, and I don't remember exactly when I said to you that was my impression, what was likely going on, but I could imagine that, almost like stages of grief or shock, that you and your husband could, accept the diagnosis differentially, which again then starts leading to this whole process of grief and grieving differently.
Right. Oh, totally. Because in the beginning, I don't even know that I was grieving. I was just surviving and hoping. I think accepting it was a place then where I had to grieve, because acceptance of a diagnosis like that is a huge loss. It's a permanent loss in a way. I mean, it's not a temporary
I think it is, especially with the severe Sam's illnesses. I mean, barring some huge breakthrough in medicine, like it does appear permanent.
Yeah, and so how our acceptance, I mean, it's so hard to remember, because it just, so much of that time just felt like I was in these deep waters trying to stay afloat in a way, and like trying to breathe. And So it just felt like a survival. So a month after we started seeing you, he actually agreed to medication. And I think getting him on the medication and kind of this effort towards stabilization, because stabilization is different than recovery. Stabilization is just like, let's just get him stable so that everything isn't unpredictable. His behavior is a little more predictable. But I think that's when maybe I started on the road to acceptance, because I did start attending NAMI support group, and I went to the educational class that NAMI offers. And so I was on the acceptance road during that time after the medication, because it did stabilize him.
Do you remember I can imagine there could be some anger or frustration. I even wonder if there could be some upset with me, because yes, I'm trying to help, but I'm the bearer of horrific news. Like, you come to me, oh, you should go see Dr. Heacock. And then I say, yeah, this looks like schizophrenia.
Yeah.
To drop that bomb on your family.
Yeah. I did not have, what I had was because I remember the first time I came with my husband and Sam to the appointment, because I think the first two I wasn't there because Sam didn't want me to be there. And then the first time I came, I asked you if it could be drug-induced psychosis, and you were pretty certain that it wasn't. So I think the only thing I felt like is like, does he really know? He doesn't really know, because I still didn't want to admit it. But definitely no anger. It felt more like a relief in a way to have someone that was helping him, because it felt like there was no help out there. Mm-hmm. So it felt like a relief to actually have you come into our situation. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think too, we talked about this, I think, a couple seasons ago with another set of parents, but I think with schizophrenia, there's a kind and quality of grief which is maybe different than any other psychiatric illness, because if you have a child with severe bipolar disorder or anorexia or any of a number of other things, you don't necessarily lose the core essence of the son or daughter. There are times when you can see, there's my girl, there's my boy, and now they're back in the darkness. But especially with pretty serious schizophrenia, it's like an abduction of the person. It's like the old person is gone, and there's this very different soul there that may share some of the same qualities, but the person's gone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, actually, it's called an ambiguous loss, because it's an ambiguous loss can either be there psychologically and not physically. So that would be in the case of an actual abduction of somebody's loved one, or they are there physically but not psychologically, which is the case of schizophrenia and dementia. Dementia is another one where people experience ambiguous loss. And the grief is actually even amplified, because it's like a disenfranchised grief, that because it's a death, it's a loss, but it's not recognized by society or by institutions or people, because they're still there. Mm-hmm. And so you're experiencing that grief without a lot of the support that you would if you actually lost someone to death.
In some ways, does Sam feel gone to you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a daily struggle. I feel like, there's a new normal that's emerging for sure. And the longer I go from the time of his break, the more I forget about what he was like before. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the grief is so complicated too, because this is your child that is still there. And it gets triggered at times by his peers when they graduate high school or college, or get married or get their first job or have these big life events. And you're not experiencing that, all those hopes and dreams you had for your child, when they're born or when when you're seeing them become who they are. So it's a constant grieving process. I mean, the grief comes in waves, and I don't know that it will ever completely go away. I think the time between will get less and less, but...
Mm-hmm. Or even now, I was just thinking before we started recording that Sam has come so far and that he is stable. You know, he's not having homicidal stuff. He's not... He doesn't seem overtly ill in the way he did when I met him. But if you start to question him, he's still delusional in some things. Like, you know, he believes that you two aren't his actual parents, that he, you know, that he was adopted by you in a very strange, bizarre way, and that he does feel that you care about him, but that you're not actually related to him. Mm-hmm. And when I think about that, I think again like this ambiguous grief. Like, he's very sweet. It's like it's very sweet in appointments to see you guys together. Like, he clearly has a loving bond with you. Yet at least when he speaks in a way where he feels like he'll say, that, you know, you know, he calls you by your first name. You know,
right?
Karen's not my mom.
Right.
She's not my mother.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Whew, that was, that definitely, that began, or at least we were made aware of those thoughts like about a year and a half ago. He told us that, and that was just another, you know, wave of grief. Like, and that's another area of acceptance, accepting that this is a fixed delusion that he has, but it's not going to change the way I care about him, or he is my son. So
well, in some ways, like what we see when we think about just this one phenomenon, that there is this sweet caring between you and yet then there's this part of him that's not Sam. That's like, no, I'm not from them. I came from another place, some sort of vague, ambiguous place that he talks about. Mm-hmm. I wonder if we might transition into talking a little bit about grief and acceptance and coping and how that affected your marriage. Now, your husband's not here. He was fine with you telling his story, but you two are now heading towards divorce. Mm-hmm. And you know, he was comfortable with you talking about this. And we're not here to tell his story. You know, this is your story. But I wonder if you might speak a little bit to how Sam's illness and the events of the last few years may have affected your marriage, and even like differential grieving or coping with the two of you that could have played a role in that. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because I can see that maybe it played a little role, but I think what happened really was that this illness, or the onset of this illness, actually like shined a big spotlight on things that were already there. Mm. So, I mean, the issues that were there were just illuminated. It wasn't because of this situation. And I don't know if this hadn't happened, would it have ended in the same way? I don't know that, but I think it did shine a light on it. And then when you're both also, you have this emotional, mental, physical situation that you're constantly putting into, which is our son. I think it makes it harder to work on the issues that were already there. Yeah. Because so much of your energy is going to caring for our son. Mm-hmm. And both of our energy, I mean, that's the thing I'm really grateful for, is that there is a teamwork here. Despite our relationship, we both care for him and want to stay a team in caring for him. And you have another child who's grown, which I can imagine that having that child grown and launched is actually maybe a big relief, because you know, if this had happened 8-10 years ago, that's definitely a phenomenon I see a lot in my work, where there's a kid that's so ill that requires all the emotional energy of the parents, and then there's this vacuum, and the other kid or kids really get neglected and or are kind of expected to be perfect because they're like, look, we have this sick
kid, your brother or sister's very ill, you need to hold it together because we got to take care of this person. But fortunately, your family, your other child's grown.
Yes.
Yeah.
It still affected her greatly, even though she wasn't living in the home. And there's been a lot of healing that's been done because of that. But yes, and I actually wanted a lot more kids. So I always think, oh, I'm so glad I didn't. Because that would have been difficult for sure. Yeah.
How do you, I know it's just, I mean, you're not divorced yet, but I would imagine it's crossed your mind and your husband's mind that even though you are separating, you have your children together and you have Sam together, and Sam's going to need your support, both physical, financial, emotional, indefinitely. So there's this issue of the two of you being apart, trying to help him, and then the longer term issue, which we can get to, of what happens when you're gone. But I'm wondering how the two of you think about caring for him as you move towards divorce.
I mean, right now, the way we think about it is that we want to communicate clearly about it together, always be consciously friendly and friends, and talk about it, communicate openly about his care. And I hope that can continue, because it's really, really helpful to have a partner in caretaking and not doing it alone. And I don't think either of us want the other person to have to do it alone. So as long as we can stay on that track, I think we can do it. I think we can do a good job with that. Yeah.
Do you think Sam trusts you each equally?
That's a good question. I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Because again, I'm imagining in this kind of fixed delusion where he is now, that you two are caring for him, and he has some gratitude for that, but also doesn't see you as related at all.
Right, true. I know he likes his being with his dad better. I don't know if it's a trust issue or just because they enjoy some of the same things. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to be moving forward.
Do you ever still feel fearful around him? Because you talked about, one of the initial presentations of when he had his break was that he got homicidal.
Not anymore. I did for probably the first year or two, because I was the target for his aggression as well, the mother. But not anymore. No, I don't. Yeah. He's a gentle person, and I see these qualities, like he's still very caring and gentle, and he just doesn't always know how to be in that, but yeah.
It's actually, I think that's a really powerful description of one of the things that's kind of lost often with schizophrenia, is not knowing how to be.
Yeah.
Not knowing how to be in the world, not knowing how to be in relationship, not knowing how to be in the grocery store.
Right.
Like not like being kind of alien, like looking around like, I don't really fit in here. I mean, and in fact, and that's my sense with this delusion about you not being his mother, is like, this is part of the alienation of schizophrenia, that he, at his core, he knows that he is so separate and so different now than he was, but he can't really put words to it, so he's putting it onto you. Like, you're kind of the alien, you're the different one, you're the unknown one.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, you're not who you say you are. Yeah. When you think about the future, and you think about Sam, like what are some of your main fears or concerns as you look forward?
Yeah, I actually don't have a lot of fears or worries. They are pretty minimal. And I think that's just because of the way I've coped with the loss, through a lot of mindfulness, a lot of being present, a lot of all I have is today. This is what we have. It doesn't mean I do think you need to plan for the future, but I don't have a lot of worries. I think my main worry is actually that he's not going to be healthy, because he has some unhealthy habits that could contribute later in life to some really not so good quality of life, besides his mental illness.
You're thinking of like smoking.
Smoking, yeah.
But that's such a thing with schizophrenia.
It is.
Seems like almost everybody with schizophrenia smokes.
Yeah. It's helps them feel better.
Yeah.
Somehow.
No, there is some research that nicotine calms the brain of everybody, but people with schizophrenia will report when they can. It dials down voices. It dials down sort of the pain and dysphoria of delusions, and there's just something that's sort of peace-inducing about it.
Yeah. But
interestingly, when I've tried to get my patients with schizophrenia, hey, just use a nicotine patch or gum. No.
No, it's not the same.
No, they want the cigarettes.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And I guess if I really dug deep, I mean, certainly worries like creep up, but yeah, I don't think a lot about it. I do, which is planning is not, I'm not the best planner. So that is something I am trying to do, like to plan for his future so that my daughter's not left with the burden, financial or physical burden.
Because I wonder, like, do you set up a trust? Do you try to set up a treatment guardian? Again, there's two of you. So, if your husband were to pass first, then you would be here. But at some point, you two won't be here.
Right.
And I know this is the thing I hear a lot from families as they age and as their adult children age with serious persistent mental illness. They're like, okay, what do I set up to make sure my kid's okay when I'm gone?
Right. And that is something I need to think more about. I don't think about that enough, probably because I'm not worried about it, but it is important to plan for that, for sure. Yeah.
Looking back over the last few years, what do you wish you had known that you know now? And again, I think there'll probably be a lot of people listening to this who are somewhere along the journey that you have been on. And I think that's one of the reasons this topic was requested by a bunch of listeners, is this is such a common thing.
Yeah.
And do you have any thoughts about what you've learned along the way
goodness.
or wish you'd known?
Yeah, I have learned so much. I mean, there's two answers to that question, because one, for the sake of helping others, and then one, just actually, I think my own transformation journey through this has been so profound. I mean, I'm not the same person I was. It's been, I think going through a suffering and a loss like this actually has been, it's hard to say this because at the expense of my son, it's kind of this contradiction or a paradox. It's been the most excruciating, painful experience, but one of my greatest gifts and teachers. I mean, it's been such a teacher. I almost feel like I've been on my own medicine journey through this. So in a way, there's nothing I would change, because I think if I knew things ahead of time, it wouldn't have taken me on the road I needed to be on for my own personal growth and transformation and the way I see the world now. But for the sake of I think I wish I knew that he was susceptible to this. I actually just found out a year ago that my grandfather's brother had schizophrenia. Of course, that wasn't known in the family. They didn't tell people that. So I didn't even know that was a possibility. I didn't have any knowledge that marijuana could be an environmental trigger. Yeah, so I guess those practical things of sometimes I wish I hadn't moved to Colorado. So I don't know, where it's so free and available. But and sometimes, I think maybe I should have taken him out of the school, so there's a lot of things. I don't know. It can start me on a spiral of guilt and things I should have done, which for me is never good.
Right. But then we'll also never know. And I think this is such a therapy issue. We work with people like, this happened to me and my family. What if? But, even if we just piece together what we know, looking back, there was clearly a prodromal thing that started happening in high school. Was that substance induced or not? We'll never know.
Exactly.
We'll never know. It seems pretty clear his psychotic break was related to substances, but what is it going to happen anyway? We'll never know. That best estimates now are that maybe 10% of cases of schizophrenia in the U.S., the final trigger, the final catalyst was marijuana, but the other 90% probably, it's complicated. Weed was a factor, maybe head injuries or birth trauma or just other But again, I think I agree with you that the more we can try to stay in the now and not go back, what if, because it's just an unknowable loop.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. and can lead to a lot of guilt. And I think that's definitely something in the grief process. You go, going through guilt, like, what if I'd done this? And yeah, getting stuck in that ruminating is, it can be almost make the grief pathological in a way, instead of just moving through the feelings of the grief, which is so important. I mean, you have to feel those feelings.
As we're wrapping up here, is there anything else that you wanted to add, or areas that we didn't touch on that you think would be important for listeners to hear?
Well, there's a lot of stuff I didn't mention, but I do think that one of the most important pieces of my own recovery, because it feels like a recovery in a way, I think, getting through, continuing to get through this, is supportive people who recognize your grief, and you recognize your own grief. I also think that going through the grieving process is so important. So even a couple weeks ago, I had a wave of grief hit me. And I mean, I was just like on the floor making guttural sounds, like just wailing. And then it felt like all day crying. And it doesn't scare. I mean, I know that I'm not going to feel like that forever. I have to let those feelings do their work because it's a lot to grieve, and we need to grieve. So it's really important to feel the grief, and have support, have people around you that acknowledge the loss, because that's really, really important. Yeah.
You can help Chris and me by sharing this episode with someone who might find hope or meaning in it. And as always, we love to hear your comments, thoughts, ideas. You can reach us through my website, craigheacockmd.com.